Hey there, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Charter at one point had to have their arm twisted to build out rural broadband to certain areas, but now they're embracing it and seeking out and winning opportunities. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Usey here with Zecorum. So I saw a couple of stories here, both on the same day about Charter here in Telecompetitors. So you see here, CEO says Charter has received funding for 260,000 more rural builds since big RDOF wins. So since its big RDOF win several years ago, Charter has received funding to cover some of the costs of deploying broadband to 260,000 more rural locations from state and other sources, said Charter CEO Chris Winfrey at an investor conference today, and there will likely be more to come. It says our BEAD chances are very good in reference to the upcoming $42.5 billion broadband equity access and deployment program. Winfrey also offered some new details on how Charter became so bullish on rural broadband. The company was required to make service to 185,000 rural locations in upstate New York as a condition of regulatory approval for its acquisition of Time Warner Cable. And states will quite often do that, or the federal government, depending on who's looking at a merger or acquisition, will often say, okay, you've got to make certain concessions, you've got to get rid of some of your properties in certain areas to keep competition, or you've got to do some other things. In this case, they were saying, the state of New York said, you got to build out rural broadband in these areas if you want this deal to go through. So he said we looked at it as a tax on the deal. In other words, it's just something they had to do to get this deal. Said it actually turned out to be great, which is we had so much confidence, which is why we had so much confidence going into RDOF. I'm assuming that's what he's saying there. Yeah, company was once one of the largest winners in the RDOF auction, which awarded funding for an area to the company that committed to deploying service for the lowest level of government support. So they, along with others, participated in this reverse auction, and they won quite a few areas, one of the larger winners there. Charter is now ahead of schedule on its $5 billion RDOF build, to which the government contributed about $1 billion. So that gives you an idea how much support they're getting from the government. So they're going to basically be spending $5 billion, but they're getting $1 billion from the government to help deploy in those rural areas. We've got this pipeline and we're delivering and we're ahead of schedule, he said. Winfrey cautioned, though, that the company might not seek bid funding in some states, depending on the rules that those states put in place, because states do have a lot of leeway in how they can award this money. There's certain things in the notice of funding opportunity that gives them that leeway, and then also is, suggests to the states that they might be better served if they award these things to not-for-profits or municipalities, for example, a not-for-profit or maybe a energy electric co-op. So that's what they're talking about there. It says we want to make sure that the rules work for private capital, an apparent reference to rules that some states have contemplated that would require public ownership of BEAD-funded projects. And I don't think required is the right word there, unless the state tries to do that. But in general, I think, again, the NOFO from the NTIA does provide, as far as a scoring system, I think, or at least certainly recommends that these things, again, be not-for-profit to help keep costs down, because that's really this broadband affordability is a big part of this as well. While noting that rural builds have a long payback, Winfrey noted that the IRR, the internal rate of return on rural builds, is very high and the risk is extremely low. Winfrey also noted that Charter's rural strategy positively impacts the company's valuation within about 4 years. The payback is pretty vast from a valuation perspective, he observed. Winfrey made his comments about Charter rural funding at SVB, Moffett-Nathanson Technology, Media and Telecom Conference. A replay is available at this link. I did link to this article and another one in Telecompetitor I'm going to look at here in just a moment. So that's in the description of the video. So, it all depends as far as return also on how rural the area is. So if they're going into areas that are rural, more so, let's say, than a normal MSO might go in, a big national MSO, then they can maybe get a rate of return. But where it really gets difficult is these areas where you've got many miles per customer. So you can get the broadband deployed for if you get assistance, let's say government assistance through RDOF or BEAD, something like that, you can help get paid to get that broadband deployed. But then you've got ongoing operation of that network. And if you don't have that, number one, you don't have that many customers that you could potentially serve, and then you're going to have a certain take rate. So you're going to have very few customers in that area. And you've got a lot of plant to maintain. You've got many, many miles, so long truck rolls, those kinds of things. So the more rural it is, the harder it is to make that rate of return work, which is something that the NTIA or FCC or somebody needs to look at. Right now they have the USF, Universal Service Fund, to help telephone companies. Originally it was to help telephone companies deliver phone service in these more expensive areas, and they are now applying a lot of those funds to broadband. And maybe some of that can go to help defray some of the costs of operating these very, very rural areas. We've got here another story, Charter, and this was the same day. Charter, TDS, Frontier, and 21 others win Wisconsin broadband funding. So right here is talking about Charter, and here's another story about them winning money in Wisconsin. State of Wisconsin announced broadband funding awards totaling $16.6 million today. Winners include Charter, TDS Telecom, Frontier, and 21 other service providers. So obviously that's a lot of smaller areas with 21 providers in there as well. Many of the other providers were smaller local companies, including Washington Island Electric Co-op, which was the biggest winner and is slated to receive $2.5 million. The company will invest over $2.8 million of its own in the fiber broadband project. So there's a match there of looks like over 50%. Charter Spectrum in America was the second largest winner and will receive over $2.4 million for the fiber broadband project, toward which the company will contribute additional nearly $3.7 million. So you can see that Charter has got a lot of skin in the game there. So they're getting funds to do this, but they're also putting a lot of their own money in that, over 50%. Charter CEO said today that the company has won funding from state broadband and similar funding programs to bring broadband to 260,000 locations. I'm assuming that's talking about Wisconsin. All companies winning funding will cover at least half of the project costs from their own resources. Matching funds total over $25.3 million, according to a press release. Maybe that is just Wisconsin. All funding winners plan to deploy fiber broadband. Not surprising. And that's what Charter is doing. So, as they go into these greenfield opportunities, whether it's they're edging out territory that they're planning on doing anyway, or certainly deploying in an area like this, they are going to be doing fiber. So that's one reason I think that it's like, yeah, let's do rural. They know fiber now. I mean, they've been deploying fiber in their cable plant, and now they've done greenfield fiber, and they continue to do that. So why not? Looks like it's all fiber. They don't mention anything about fixed wireless here. So TDS, Frontier, and local companies. TDS Telecom, Farmers Telephone Company, was awarded over $1.5 million for a project mapping impacting 11 towns. The company will contribute additional funding exceeding $6.2 million to project costs. Frontier was awarded $500,000 for a project to which the company will contribute an additional $2.7 million. According to today's press release, and again, there's a link here that you can go to if you link to this article, the state of Wisconsin is awarded $345 million to expand broadband. Awards were made through the Broadband Expansion Grant Program. A complete list of funding winners is available at this link. So again, I've linked to both of these articles so you can get those links for further information if you'd like to do that. So again, Charter, you see Frontier. Frontier's been also deploying fiber as quickly as possible because they were behind the curve on that. So they've been deploying a lot of fiber. Telephone company, but they're trying to get DSL upgraded to fiber, and certainly deploying in new areas probably like this. I don't know if this doesn't mention if the Frontier was their existing territory where they're upgrading fiber or if they're going into a new territory, but you can see national providers getting involved in these rural areas as well. And I think when we see BEAD, we're going to see that. We're going to see people like Charter and even Comcast probably and others jumping in and trying to get those funds. And what states need to do is weigh things carefully. It would be nice to have let's say companies that can provide the service at maybe a lower cost because they're not for profit, but then again, they may not be the best choice in a certain area. If you've got experienced providers that can come in and provide the service, they all have to have under BEAD, they have to have a low cost option. The state gets to determine what that is. Currently, while it's available, they have to do the affordable connectivity program. So the big companies, I think the biggest issue people have sometimes with the big companies is their quality of customer service. And in some cases, the quality of the connection, but generally that's in areas where you've got maybe somebody like a Frontier that has DSL, or AT&T that's got DSL in a territory. As soon as somebody gets fiber, they're generally really happy with the actual broadband service. They still may not be happy with the kind of faceless, huge ISP, the national company that doesn't seem to have a presence in their local community other than maybe marketing, and that's about it. So, but again, these major companies know what they're doing. So if they can get fiber in the area, the broadband can be good. Again, you got to consider the price, and that's just something that, again, the states need to look at. Does it make sense to give this to somebody maybe who has less experience, or do we go with somebody that's already in the area, or somebody that can provide this service at a maybe a better cost, get everything produced? They can take less money to do it, or we'd have to give somebody else more funds to be able to do it, but maybe they can charge a lower price. So states are going to have to balance all this out. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and click the subscribe button, click the bell to be notified. If this was helpful, go ahead and give a like on the video. I'd appreciate that. And I will see you next time for Broadband Deployment News. Take care. Bye-bye.